Hey everyone, this is a small piece of, video to talk about how you could make a good presentation in front of people and what to keep in mind when you're making a PowerPoint presentation for others, right? So I've got some ideas and I've got some, theories, I guess, on how to make this good for you. So let's go to my slide in the class where I talked about this point, and I'm going to go quickly. So as you see here, I've got some ideas for you to keep in mind. First of all, you have to think about your material. Right? When you're making a presentation, you have to think about your material. The first thing you got to know is what's your message? What are you trying to send to people, right? And that message, you have to find it because you have to simplify it, right? You can't hope that the message that you have is not simple, right? It's like when you write an essay, you have to make a thesis statement, right? That means that you have to clarify the message by simplifying it. You do that. Next, you question yourself, what do you want your people to retain? Right? What's the things that you want their minds to keep? Right? And that you repeat. That you take the time to say 5 times, right? Anything that you want them to repeat, that you want them to remember, you repeat and you repeat and you repeat, right? It's okay. People don't mind repetition as long as you don't say it the exact same way, right? Nothing stops you from re-explaining it in a different way and trying to approach it on a different side. Ultimately, it's still repeating, but it's important to do it. Certainly with everything that you want them to remember, because if you don't repeat it, you can't expect them to understand its value. But the more you repeat something, the more valuable it becomes to their minds. You also, when you think about your presentation, a lot of people don't do this. They don't want to participate too much. They don't think about it. They don't know how to adapt participation. So the best way I found it is what in your course topic or in your presentation topic is debatable and what requires questioning, right? Not from only from you, but from your people. And if you can figure those things out, I don't want you to just know that they exist. I want you to demand to your participants to participate in what is debatable or what requires questioning. And if you can figure out these things, you can have a much more entertaining conversation. But you have to know which they are before you present, not while you present. And the next and last thing is what requires participation, right? Are you going to ask your people to create a file, or are you going to make them enter a form, or like are you just going to ask them to sign their names? What participation is it, right, that you're going to ask from them? And you have to prepare that very much, right? And that's super important. Right. And about your presentation, you got to know what your presentation is. I have 4 categories. I call informative presentations the one that are just for information's sake. And be careful with those because a lot of people make informative presentations that they could have just done an email for. And because of that, they lose tons of organizational time because they're not taking into consideration the fact that sometimes the information doesn't have to be given in a presentation. You can save all that time by just sending an email. There's also educational presentations, which is my clear way to go. There's managerial presentations, which are the ones that you do as a manager so that your team is informed of the tasks that they have to do or where the project is. These are important projects, because important presentations because they have a message, right? Motivational message, or they have a message like we're almost done, or we're working, or we're starting. So it needs to be clear in that message. But you also have to repeat what they have to retain. So the tasks that are going to come, right? You want them to remember. So if somebody has a very important task, you maybe say it 3 times in that meeting so that they can really understand how important their tasks are, right? Another thing, if you have things that you need to question in your project, right, or in your management, well, this is a good time to do it because it's a debatable time and you're demanding it, right? So these managerial presentations are very key, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to do a lot of them. But try to think about, what your material is and try to simplify it, repeat what's important, demand what you think needs questioning, and prepare what will require participation. Hopefully, you'll be able to get all this done and it will work. And finally, you also have recurring presentations, the ones that you're going to end up redoing a whole lot of times. Those are easier because you end up rehashing that presentation you have by just changing some of the stuff. You also can ask yourself, is a presentation needed? Right? Sometimes you don't need a presentation. Sometimes you just get in there and talk. You don't actually have to have visual representation. So try to know if you actually need visual presentation or not, right? It's not always needed. And finally, what will your presentation accomplish, and does it accomplish it? A lot of times, a lot of people want to make a presentation. So let's say I'm making a managerial presentation for the start of my projects, and I've got this project starting, and I want to get the whole team coming. Well, will my presentation, one, inform the people of what they have to do for the project, right? And is my presentation good enough to properly explain that to people? If not, the goal of my presentation, which was to inform the people of what they had to do, will not be attained because it did not focus on trying to achieve my goal. And after the meeting, it's important to ask for feedback. A lot of people don't ask for feedback and end up being in a loop of their own beliefs, and you start thinking that what you do is godly and that nobody can compare to you. But if you ask for feedback, you're going to start understanding that there's always improvements and that you can take the time to get better at all these things, and you can learn how to make a better presentation. And in a managerial meeting, it's extremely important that after the meeting, you clarify all tasks that have an outcome of such meeting, right? If anything you expect from people to get out of this meeting, like you have to produce this, you have to produce that, you have to read this thing, you have to look into that, these need to be done after the meeting also and inform them, or else you can't expect all these things to happen. It's part about what needs to be retained and repeating it again, right? And hopefully you like this, right? These are my little ideas that you can have if you want to start presenting, right? And if you have no direction, right? So try to think about what your message is, what you're trying to say, what you're trying to accomplish, and give yourself more questions than just, I'm going to produce a presentation. Because if you just produce a presentation with information on it, it's going to look boring, it's just going to be information, and people aren't really going to be interested. So try to give it some more flavor, right? And give it a bit more of a, I don't know, little fanciness. So, anyway, it's a pleasure. I hope you liked my little tips. Remember, I'm not an expert on presenting, but people kind of think I am. So this is how I do it and how I think about my future presentation. I hope you liked it. I'll talk to you later. And stay tuned, right? Because even though we're done with presentation tips, we are going to the most popular one, the one that everybody likes, work method.